well, while we try and pick up the pieces in KwaZulu-Natal, we also have to look to the future and what problems we will see in that province's economy. You can imagine infrastructure so badly damaged. It's hard to move goods around, hard to get the port working reliably, hard really to get an economy growing properly. Ravi Pillay is the MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs in KZN. MEC, good morning to you and thank you for your time. Your province has had such a rough time in the last year. Now you have these floods. Is it possible yet to know what kind of impact these floods are going to have on your economy at this stage?
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your viewers. Yes, there is a picture that's beginning to emerge. It is severe, but I think all role players are rolling up their sleeves and getting to work. You mentioned the port just now, and there was, for example, a threat to fuel supply. But working with national government, the National Department of DPE, Transnet, the KZN municipality, the provincial department, we were able to find, improvised measures to get the trucks rolling out. Just to keep people assured, I think there's the pipeline from the Durban port to Gauteng in respect of fuel was not affected. So it's just those that are dependent on physical delivery per truck from the port that were affected. But we've had last night, I think, 140 trucks that went out, and we think that's stabilized and it will continue to improve. In fact, there was a major bridge that was washed out there. We had to get an alternative route, upgrade a road that was parallel to the dirt road, and the team really did fantastic work over a very short period of time. So that's an example of people getting together and improvising to get things working again. Fortunately, the N3 is largely free-flowing, in fact, totally free-flowing. The N2 North and N2 South have just two minor, N2 North has a minor deviation where we do a contra flow for about 2 kilometers. And then the N2 South has a little bit of a longer deviation, which adds about 15 minutes to travel time on the N2 South. So it's the inner roads like the M4, which has some difficulties, and of course in an area like Ugu, side roads or supplementary secondary roads where there have been difficulties. So that's going to be a major issue. But clearly economic recovery as a whole is also dependent on the total recovery of society, and that's what we're dealing with from a humanitarian point of view at the moment. Resources are redirected to that particular purpose. Water, many areas have water, but there's a significant portion that still do not. Umgeni has a major aqueduct problem, and their forecast is the 24th of April for that particular repair, which is about a week away. In the meantime, we have a massive tankering operation. It's never enough, but let me also take the opportunity to pay tribute to the civil society sector, NGO sector, that are also coming to the party in a major way. So I think if I had to divide it all contributes to economic recovery in terms of stabilizing the situation. It's the search and rescue where we still, I think, have about 40 to 50 people unaccounted for. Our death toll, of course, has just passed the 400 mark. Dealing with families in terms of their burials, access to some communities that have been cut off. But there, I think we're quite pleased that the SAPS and the SANDF has provided significant air capacity now. I think we have between 7 to 10 helicopters that are able to assist us in that process. So I think we should stabilize within a few days. It's the water infrastructure. Then there's electricity there's large areas where there's a combination of basically infrastructure from the KZN sector, a small portion of Ugu also that's affected as far as the electricity issues are concerned. So I think those are the two major stabilizing factors that are required. If you take a big operation.
MEC, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You just suggested that the death toll had gone past the 400 mark. Do you actually have a death toll at the moment of how many people we have now lost? And I know the number, we have been expecting it to go up.
Yeah, I think let me leave the Premier to make that announcement formally. If you don't mind, I think that will be later in the day. That's a coordinated figure, and we try to leave it to the respective line functions to make formal announcements but I stand by what I said in terms of it having just passed the 400 mark.
Let me see. I do appreciate that. I do want to ask, if I may, about rebuilding infrastructure. You spoke about water, and it's so difficult to do. You need roads to be fixed. You've taken us through the major roads. You also need phone lines to work. You need things like fiber lines to work for the internet. It's a big job. As a province, do you have the capacity to rebuild all of that and to rebuild some of that infrastructure quite quickly?
Well, I think the telcos are busy at work rehabilitating that particular sector. We think they can do it. They have the capacity to move with speed, and where they need assistance from the public sector, that will be available. I think they should be able to restore fairly quickly. It's the water infrastructure where that's underway. Guinea is on top of its game there. It's just that it's major repair. Electricity, again, maybe a little bit more complicated in terms of its decentralized nature, in terms of sub-transformers having been lost, lines having been lost. And I think I saw a figure of Eskom saying that they have 650 faults that they are dealing with, of which 200 are directly related to the flood. So that gives you a sense of the scale. So it's all about prioritization. But I think everyone, is working at full speed. We're also expecting, I believe there's a national cabinet meeting this evening, so we'll see what decisions coming out of there. I'm sure you've read that the president canceled his trip to Saudi Arabia because he wanted to focus attention on the disaster here. So we think that means that there will be even more technical capacity coming from national to assist the provincial teams. In terms of infrastructure, again, it's going to be a question of prioritizing. There's the social side, the housing, and I think there the National Minister and the provincial MEC have moved very quickly in quantifying it. I think it's altogether 13,000 households that have been affected. If I recall correctly, it's 6,000 totally destroyed and the balance partially destroyed, or somewhere around there. They've quantified it. They have their lists. They're moving with temporary residential TRAs accommodation, and they're busy currently with some basic compliance issues, and they want to hit the ground as early as this coming week. It's the roads and bridges which require more thorough technical assessments. I think where engineers have to be on the ground and prioritize the total. Okay, let me leave that to the Premier to make the announcement when he communicates. But it's not a complete figure, but the infrastructure, let me say, has exceeded the 10 billion mark at this point in time. So it's a question of technical teams working in a decentralized way, organized way, coordinated way to work on the priority areas to systematically aid the recovery.
I'm sorry.
We've been through
I'm sorry, MEC, to interrupt you again. When you say 10 billion mark, you're suggesting it's going to cost 10 billion rand to repair?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you take the social side, the housing, water infrastructure, electricity, roads, and bridges, that's the really big number in that.
And MEC, the other issue, I mean, you've seen national government and you've seen so many different people. I mean, you've seen Limpopo Health Department, Western Cape Disaster Management, sending people to your province. How are you feeling about the rest of the country sending so much help to you?
Oh, we're very pleased, and we must express our appreciation. We are a unitary state, one country. We must be able to help each other in our time of need. I think the search and rescue expertise in particular is a particularly welcome one, because you can understand the extent to which people are traumatized when their loved ones are missing. And in some cases, you get a case where they say, look, we know they are buried here and we haven't been able to take them out. And you need that specialist expertise. And we have not been able to reach everybody quickly. So that kind of expertise is very warmly and sincerely appreciated.
You're also, as I understand it, the MEC for Environmental Affairs in KwaZulu-Natal, and there's a huge issue around climate change that comes out of these floods. Do you think we need to really focus a lot more attention on this issue now?
Absolutely. I think the President was quite clear in his articulation on it. But I don't think it's a question of what KZN on its own does. There's the bigger issue of even the international approach to it, which we must contribute to in a significant way. I think what you are saying is, how does it impact on our day-to-day planning, on our development planning, our town planning, and our stormwater management planning? I think clearly those are the issues that we will need to focus on. And we've been saying just yesterday in a meeting, despite the fact that it is a disaster and there's damage and then you have to restore, let's look at it how we use it as an opportunity to restore in a way that takes these factors into account. For example, we're at the Durban port in a place called Wilson's Wharf, and looking at the various canals that join to make up that water system. And now that we've had this, as we restore, how do we take that into account? So that's a major strategic planning exercise, and definitely you're quite correct, that needs to have very serious attention, but not just in the theoretical way. As we are restoring, let's apply our minds to say, let's restore in a way that talks to that imperative.
And also, you're the MEC for tourism as well, MEC. Normally, you would be encouraging people to come to KZN, especially for a long weekend like this. For the moment, would you just prefer a little bit of time before people come back?
Well, look, those who are coming are already here. I think so. I think both the Premier and I welcome them and wish them, to the extent that they can, a memorable vacation. The figures so far, I don't have final figures, but several of the prominent hotels indicated up to 70% accommodation. There was one that had to redirect its guests to other accommodation because they couldn't overcome their water difficulty. The others have managed because they've planned and prepared for it. So I don't think it's a question of encouraging others to come now. Those who had planned and came are already here, and I think the tourist industry is a very resilient one, and would have made sure that they have been accommodated appropriately. But the numbers have dropped, definitely. I think there were significant cancellations, understandably. If I had to give you a thumbs up, I would say there were probably about 30% cancellations in certain cases. It is very unfortunate because we had a very, as you yourself said, we're coming back from a very traumatic 2.5 years. And we've actually been building very nicely January, February, March in terms of our tourism numbers. And we were looking forward to that proverbial bumper Easter, but it was not to be. But it's a question, again, as I say, of rolling up. Our natural attributes and our geographic position are hugely competitive advantages for the tourism sector, apart from our specific products and our 600 kilometer of coastline, our Drakensberg, our nature reserves. I think those are difficult. We can compete with anyone. And I think we'll reclaim our share of the domestic market and the international market very soon.
Let us know when it's ready. I'll get on the N3. MEC, I really do appreciate the time. Thank you. Ravi Pillay, the MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs in KwaZulu-Natal. Well, confirmation there from the provincial government in KwaZulu-Natal, I think, of two important facts. The first, as you see on your screen, that the number of people now confirmed to have died in this flooding has now gone over 400. We'll await that final number, I imagine, from the Premier's office in KwaZulu-Natal. And then also confirmation the cost of the rebuilding the infrastructure, at least 10 billion rand. That coming out from the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government just here in the last few minutes.